My name is Eli Finkel. I'm a professor of psychology at Northwestern University, and I'll be presenting some research that has been spearheaded by Paul Eastwick, a former graduate student of mine who's now a professor at University of Texas. And the title of the talk is The Delusion of Romantic Self-Insight. And I want to talk about how dating has changed in the internet era. And in particular, I want to talk about online dating. One of the major assumptions of online dating is that we can look at profiles of potential romantic partners and discern from reading those profiles who is romantically compatible with us. So if that's true, that we have insight into our preferences and can tell who's compatible with us, then this is an outstanding way that we could go about selecting a romantic partner, or at least reducing the size of the pool. But if it's not true that we have insight into our romantic preferences, then not only are we wasting a great deal of time by browsing all these profiles, but we are also limiting or ruling out people from the dating pool who might be especially compatible with us. And so what I'll do today is talk about the degree to which we have accurate insight into our romantic preferences. And this question boils down to two distinct questions. The first one is, are there sex differences in what people are looking for in a potential romantic partner? And the short answer to that is, of course there are. Men are especially interested in looks much more than women are. Women are especially interested in earning prospects more than men are. Those are widely replicated sex differences. I want to probe a little deeper and find out whether those sex differences hold up when it really matters. And the second question I have doesn't involve sex differences. It says, we as individuals, to what degree do we have accurate insight into what it is that tends to inspire our romantic attraction? If we do have good insight, then browsing profiles is a great way to go about finding a partner. If we don't, then we really should probably meet face-to-face to get a chemistry check of who's compatible with us. Let's start by talking about sex differences. There are large sex differences in stated preferences. That is, if you ask people, to what degree do you value a certain series of characteristics? Many things men and women agree on. We all like warm partners, kind partners, etc. But there are two massive sex differences that I mentioned earlier. The first is physical attractiveness. Men like that more than women. The second is earning prospects. Women like that more than men. But before we conclude that these sex differences are totally universal, let's first examine a little bit about the research paradigms that people have used to try to establish those effects. One of the major research programs or research paradigms is to ask people about hypothetical partners. Specifically, ask them, to what degree are you looking for somebody who possesses characteristics like good earning prospects or good earning potential? And you see the sex differences there. Men want looks more than women do. Women want earning prospects more than men do. A second paradigm is you look at the effects of physical attractiveness in people depicted in photographs. So when you're evaluating photographs, men are more inspired by the attractive relative to the unattractive women, more than women are attracted to the attractive versus the unattractive men. And the best research looks at personal ads or online dating profiles. And specifically what we see in those is that men tend to advertise things about themselves oriented toward demonstrating their earning prospects. Women tend to accentuate things related to their physical attractiveness. And when men and women respond to personal ads or online dating profiles, they tend to be differentially influenced in a way that's consistent with all those other sex differences. But I have a question. What about after men and women have actually met a significant other, another person face-to-face, right? Do these sex differences that hold up so well in all those paradigms we've discussed already continue to hold up once you've met an actual flesh and blood person? Well, one empirical approach, one method that we can use to start unpacking that question is speed dating. And so Paul Eastwick and I at Northwestern University ran a whole series of speed dating events. I, in fact, served as MC of these events. And the way speed dating works is these were heterosexual events. We had 12 men and 12 women attend each event. So if you're a man, you would go on a 4-minute date with each woman, and then the MC, I in this case, would blow a whistle, and you would rotate to the next person, right? So the way it worked is that all of the men went on 4-minute dates with all of the women. All of the women, of course, went on 4-minute dates with all of the men. And what we were able to do with this method is we were able to look at the degree to which physical attractiveness and earning prospects actually predict romantic attraction to flesh and blood partners you have met in person. And one of the things we wanted to do is establish from the very outset that there was nothing strange about our sample of participants. So before they attended the speed dating, event, they reported about a week earlier on their preferences, the standard sorts of measures that people regularly use. To what degree are you interested in somebody? To what degree is it important to you that a potential partner is good looking or has good earning prospects or is highly personable and kind and warm? And as you can see here in the graph, men care more than women about physical attractiveness. Again, this is on the questionnaire that our speed daters completed the week before they attended the lab session, the speed dating event rather. Women care more about earning prospects than men do, and men and women, as has been shown in previous research, care about equally about how warm and kind a potential partner is. So here we are replicating the same effects that everybody else replicates, except we wanted to do something different. We wanted to take these same people who showed these standard sex differences and then introduce them to flesh and blood partners through the speed dating event. And here in this graph, you're going to see some different information. What you see on the y-axis is you see the correlation of an attribute, physical attractiveness, for example, with attraction, right? And so the idea should be that the higher the correlation that you're going to see here means the more strongly that characteristic inspires romantic attraction to the person. And what you can see is here are the effects for physical attractiveness, correlations in about the 0.4 range, but no sex difference. The degree to which romantic physical attractiveness inspires your romantic attraction is equally strong regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. Now, let's turn to earning prospects. Here you can see that, in general, earning prospects are a little bit less important in this sample than physical attractiveness is. The correlations are in the 0.2 range. But what you can see is, once again, the correlations are equally strong for men and women. None of these correlations was anywhere close to statistically significant. And personable is also pretty attractive, somewhere in between physically attractive and earning prospects. And once again, no sex difference. Now, you might think, I hear you thinking, right? So come on, that's just one study. This is a very surprising effect. Could it really be the case that men and women don't actually have different preferences for physical attractiveness or earning prospects once they meet a flesh and blood partner? So what we wanted to do is we wanted to conduct a meta-analysis. And specifically what that means is we tracked down every single published and unpublished article that has looked at people who have met face-to-face with a potential partner and reported on that partner how attracted they are or how satisfied they are. This also includes not only initial attraction, but also in your marriage, how satisfied are you and committed are you to the marriage, etc. But they have to report on a specific person they've met face-to-face, not on some hypothetical person who might be an ideal partner for them. So the dependent variable, as I was suggesting earlier, is an amalgam, a combined sort of measure, right? So in initial attraction contexts, it's things like romantic liking or attraction or sexual desire. In marriage, for example, you'll see things like relationship satisfaction or how much you love your partner, etc. And the other criterion we needed to include studies in this meta-analysis, include articles in this meta-analysis, was that it had to have some measure of physical attractiveness, earning prospects, or both. And some of these measures are the participants report. So if I'm reporting how attracted I am to you or how satisfied I am in our marriage, then it could be my report of how good looking you are or my report of your earning prospects. It could be your report, so how good looking do you think you are or how promising do you think your earning prospects are. Or it could be an objective assessment. For example, a consensus rating of a photograph of you in terms of how attractive you are, or a measure of what your actual income is, right? So we looked at all of those different types of measures. Now, for physical attractiveness, we were able to find 73 articles with a total of 28,000 participants. For earning prospects, we were able to track down 44 articles with about 46,000 participants. So these are large samples. They really put us in a good position to test, is there a difference between men and women in their earning prospects, and can we detect a statistically significant difference? We've got a lot of ability to do that in a sample this large. And what you see here again on the left side of this graph is physical attractiveness. On the right side, you see earning prospects. And once again, you see nothing close to a statistically significant difference. So again, the take-home message, not only from the speed dating work at Northwestern, but from the full corpus of evidence that exists anywhere in the world on this topic, that physical attractiveness, big correlate of how attracted you are to people, big correlate of how happy you are in your marriage, but not differentially for men and women. Earning prospects, a less significant predictor of initial attraction and satisfaction in your marriage, but once again, not different for men and women. Now, this raises a different set of questions, right? So the first set of questions were, well, are there really sex differences in these things that we assume to be sex differentiated? And the evidence now appears to be overwhelming that there are not sex differences in those mate preferences once you meet a flesh and blood partner. Now the question is, well, what's going on if those same people who reported a week ago that they really cared a lot about earning prospects and they cared less about physical attractiveness, then a week later meet a series of people in the flesh and blood, a series of speed dating partners, for example, and they don't show those sorts of sex differences that they exhibited a week earlier. There's an interesting question that emerges from that, which is, do people really know what they want in the first place? And this harkens back, of course, to the online dating question, the profile browsing question. So ignoring sex differences, do people who believe they value a certain characteristic actually prize it more than other people do? And so what we wanted to look at here is the correspondence between what you said you cared about in a romantic partner a week ago and the degree to which that characteristic actually inspires your attraction once you meet face to face. And if you look here in this first graph on the upper left, what you see is how physically attractive the partner is that you're rating. And this black line represents people who said that physical attractiveness was extremely important to them. So you can imagine people vary in the degree to which they say physical attractiveness is important. These are people who said, yes, it's extremely important to me. And not surprisingly, you see a strong positive correlation such that as the person you're rating goes from low attractiveness to high attractiveness there on the x-axis, the amount of romantic attraction you experience to the person goes up sharply. Now, this is crucial. If it's the case that people who say, I'm actually not that interested in romantic attraction, it doesn't actually matter, in physical attractiveness, that is, it doesn't actually matter that much to me, then you should see a weaker slope, maybe something like this. And what that slope would suggest, given that it's not parallel to the black slope, what you see here is, yes, of course, it's nice to be with somebody better looking than somebody worse looking, but the level of attraction is less strong of a predictor among people who say, I don't care about physical attractiveness. But that's not what the data show. This is what the data show. An exactly parallel line. What that means is, regardless of what you told us a week ago, of the extent to which physical attractiveness is important to you in a mate, the degree to which you liked the attractive people more than the unattractive people was the same. Everybody was about equally inspired by the degree to which the person was attractive, and their previous reports of how much they thought physical attractiveness would matter to them was irrelevant. How about earning prospects? Over here on the upper right, you can see that graph. And what do you see? Two parallel lines. People who say they care a lot about earning prospects, people who say they don't care much about earning prospects, end up being equally inspired by the people with high relative to low earning prospects. Over here on the lower left, now we have personable. How warm and kind and friendly is the person? Once again, two parallel lines. Regardless of how personable you said you wanted how important it was for you that romantic partners are high in personability, was irrelevant to how much high versus low personable people mattered to you. Now, is this a statistical artifact or a statistical confound in our design? Is it the case maybe that people don't actually have any preferences for anything? Well, we want to suggest that the story is incredibly complicated for mating for a variety of reasons, one of which is mates vary on a lot of dimensions. People are very complicated, much more complicated than, say, a sofa. But also, the mate has to like you back, and these things all factor into the evaluation. So we did a final little quirky study where what we wanted to do was see whether we could find evidence for this predictive validity hypothesis, for this hypothesis that when you say you care about something, you actually are inspired by that thing. And we looked at cereals. Specifically, we looked at the sugar content of cereals. People vary in the degree to which they say they're looking for they like sugary versus non-sugary cereals. And then what we did is we had them sample a range of different cereals, and their report of how much they like those cereals was quite different as a function of whether they really value sugary cereals or not. And specifically, the story is this. When people say they strongly value sugary cereals, the more sugar content in the cereal, the more they like it. If they say they don't care that much about how much sugar is in cereal, then sugar content is irrelevant to how much they like the cereal. That is a totally self-evident, silly point. But contrast the slide on the lower right to the other three slides, and you can see that there's something about the mating domain. We seem not to have insight into what it is that we like in the mating domain, what will inspire our attraction, even though we have a good sense of that in a simpler domain like cereal. These are college students at Northwestern. maybe upper socioeconomic status on average. What about middle-aged people? And what about people who aren't reporting on initial attraction, but people who are actually involved in an established romantic relationship, right? Would you see the same sorts of patterns? Maybe our ideal preferences start for a certain trait start to be much more important once we're making marriage decisions, for example. So here we're looking at the distinction at the correspondence between what you say is important to you and what's actually important to you in a much older sample. Specifically, 500 participants, and the average age of these participants was 41 years old. The procedure was simple. People completed an online questionnaire. They were all romantically unattached. They were single at the time that they reported that they first started the study, and they reported their mate preferences. So on a scale from 1 to 9, how much do you value earning prospects? How much do you value good looks, etc.? And then we let 2.5 years pass, and we followed up with the same 500 people again, and they reported on either a current partner, if they were involved in a relationship at this point, which many of them were, or they reported on a desired partner, the person that they were most interested in, if they weren't currently involved with somebody. And then we assessed romantic interest, so how romantically attracted are you, how satisfied are you with this person, etc. Marriage intentions, to what degree would you like to marry this person, and marital status, because some of our people who were single when the study started were now engaged or married. And it turns out, as you can see in this graph, which I won't present all the graphs, but this is illustrative. So on the dimension of warmth, how much do you care about warmth? Turns out that people who say they care a great deal about warmth are equally inspired by how warm their current partner is than people who say they don't care that much about warmth. And here again, you have two exactly parallel lines, just like I kept showing you repeatedly. Now, I won't show you all 21 of the graphs, but they all basically looked like this. And not one of them showed different lines as a function of whether you strongly cared about the trait in question versus said you didn't care that much about the trait in question. So let's revisit the two questions. Are there, in fact, these sex differences that we all believe to be true? Is it true that men prefer physical attractiveness in a partner more than women do, that women prefer earning prospects in a man more than men do? No. That is, yes, we have these theories that we care about those things. Those theories that we care about those things influence how we behave when it comes to online dating or personal ads. But once we have met somebody in the flesh and blood, there is no longer any sex difference in the degree to which men and women care about earning prospects and physical attractiveness. Now, the second question is, do we really know what our romantic preferences are? That is, can we introspect? Do we have self-insight and know what it is that really makes us attracted to people? And here again, there appears to be no evidence that we do. Across study after study after study and analysis after analysis after analysis, when we look at people who said, I care a great deal about this characteristic, and compared them to people who said, I don't really care that much about that characteristic, they were in fact equally inspired, equally attracted to people as a function of how much they had the characteristic in question, like physical attractiveness or warmth, for example. And finally, I want to come back to the way dating works in the modern era and ask, is it really sensible for us to decide or learn who's compatible with us on the basis of browsing people's profiles? And I want to suggest to you that the answer is no. That browsing profiles for 20 seconds versus 20 minutes versus 20 hours is not going to give you different insight into who's compatible with you. And online dating is a very useful tool as a way to broaden the amount of people in your dating pool. But before you start ruling people out on the basis of their profile, remember, you might not know your preferences as much as you thought you did, and you might be spending a whole lot of time browsing profiles that actually won't be informative to your mating life. What I encourage you to do is, sure, use online dating, use speed dating and so forth, but get offline quickly for a quick chemistry check. That's the way you're going to learn whether there's romantic chemistry here.